Be the Messenger, the Courageous Hearts Collective podcast, hosted by Dr. B. Chad Starks.
Peace, power, and purpose, family. Welcome back to Be the Messenger, the Courageous Hearts Collective podcast. I'm your host, Dr. B. Chad, the Messenger. Well, like I stated last week, we're 2 mini-sodes away from completing the Be the Messenger framework and the first series of Becoming a Messenger on my YouTube channel. So, of course, as usual, I want to start off by expressing my gratitude and my high appreciation for all of you that are tuning in, those that are staying with me and walking with me on this journey, those of you that understand that transformation is a journey. And I'm grateful and highly appreciative of you all sticking with me and supporting and calling and, again, sending the text messages, the emails, where application from the words that I'm sharing are actually becoming messages in your spirit and in your heart. So it's pretty cool, y'all. It's pretty cool to get this support. First time out doing it, like I said, this is my 7th mini-sode, and I'm learning as I go. So want to be a resource for that as well. So thank you all. Okay. So we have last week, thank you all for taking the challenge. Those of you that sat in an uncomfortable space, got outside of your comfort zones and listened to a different perspective, had a different cultural experience, and really brought in that different ways of thinking to that space. I want to say thank you for accepting that challenge of building your resilience in the justice work by understanding that difference is a strength. I also want to acknowledge those that took it a step deeper. I ask for you to connect to your divine calling and step into a more spiritual, biblical definition of what diversity vocation looks like, right? To really hone in on that uncancellable resource as well as the essential resource of what diversity looks like. And I know that could be a challenge. It could be difficult. But for all of you that are parents, coaches, leaders in your professions, this is all valuable work when it comes to being a messenger. So I want to acknowledge your courage, your commitment, and your dedication. And again, thank you for staying close and walking with me on this journey. For those of you that have not purchased the Courageous Hearts Collective book, I would like to nudge you a bit to go out, hit up www.brianchadstarks.com and take a look at the book section and get your book and start the journaling. Start some of the meditation practices and the consistency of what we're trying to do to really create transformation. So, again, just last week, thank you all for accepting the call. Okay, I'm excited. I'm excited because we are 75% done going through the Be the Messenger framework, and we are going to introduce the last pillar today that we know as respect. Bear with me. This is probably a different format for these last 2 episodes. And respect here at the Courageous Hearts Collective is going to be a little different. Right now, I want to ask you what popped in your minds when you heard me say respect. And most often, it's earned, not given. I've done this in trainings and workshops. And you ought to see the diverse definitions, right? Because people are coming from different cultures, different spaces, different informal educational settings, and we define it differently. I talked about the school systems that I was fortunate enough to work with, and how discipline referrals and suspensions and expulsions were highly prevalent with a miscommunication of what respect looks like. So I really want us to understand that this is going to be a curious one for me, and I was trying to script this and trying to figure out exactly how to present this. I went back to my framework to make sure that I made this solid statement about how we see respect. The first 3 pillars of the Be the Messenger framework is identity, culture, diversity. And over the last 6 weeks, we have been taking a deep dive into those understandings of how I frame them, how my 30 years of justice work has experienced them, researched them, written about them, trained about them, spoken about them. The interesting thing on my Venn diagram, though, respect is the last pillar, because the way we look at it, if you do the intentional work in the first three, then the outcome of that work is respect. You will have respect for your identity, you will have respect for your culture, and then you would have respect for diverse ways of thinking, being, experiencing, and all those things will include different identities, different cultures, different norms, different practices. And the respect is the actionable outcome. It is actually the application. We're moving from theory now to application. And that's where the respect piece comes in. But I'm going to make an assumption here, because most often in a lot of cultures, when you hear the word respect, you start thinking about engagement with other people, right? How respect is earned, not given, or respect is given and not earned. I would like to slow up on that a little bit and just think about self-respect. We cannot do justice work without first having respect for ourselves, respect for identities. That's why the truth telling, that's why the messenger method is about reflection, becoming comfortable with who you are, and understanding that respecting yourself is the first step towards having respect for others. I repeat that. Respecting yourself is the first step in having respect for others. That's where the empathy lens comes in, to being able to connect to other people's lived experiences, to be able to understand why someone may think differently. If you have self-respect for yourself, that is so much easier. Now, I'm going to ask you all, how many of you think you have self-respect, and where do you think it came from? And I pose it that way because the self-respect in the culture where I grew up, it changed as I went on my life journey. And I think self-respect was about presenting things that didn't ask you to own. It was an avoidance, right? Like, if somebody said something about you, maybe self-respect was going to be the way you responded to it, right? I can remember, mama jokes wasn't really mama jokes as a kid, right? Like, if somebody said something about your mama, the respect was punching them in the face, right? Fighting, standing up for the respect of your mother, which was like a cultural norm where I came from. Like, if somebody really wanted to get under your skin, they would say something about your mother. So if somebody said something about Betty Lee, it was like fighting words. And that was deemed part of, the manhood identity and the respect for myself as well as for my family and my culture. But as I grew on this life journey, I realized that I was actually losing self-respect for myself and empowering someone else's message that I was connecting my spirit and soul to. What you say about Betty Lee is doesn't matter if I'm a healed spirit, because I understand in my truth telling who my mother is. And I also understand my responsibility in providing protection for her doesn't come from me having to hit you in your face. But as a young boy and growing up the way I did, sometimes you would see that. Self-respect also came to, disrespectful words that were said to you that you didn't like or wasn't ready to face or confront. And that was a sign of you needing to respond in a different way. To be a messenger here in the Courageous Hearts Collective, we need you understanding that self-respect has everything to do with being a healed person. That not handing your power over to someone else, to owning your truth, to sit in the room and not be silent. We talk about disrespect for self is when you are in the room and God gives you the message to deliver and you begin to question the external consequences of what you're going to say, and you choose those over the truth. That's the level of disrespect for self that we most often see. How many of you are disrespecting yourself by being silent? Healing first, justice always, reform forever. Now, let's move to a more general term of respect. And let's go to the unassumed or the assumption in the workplace, right? I feel like most often respect is about moderate tolerance. It's about being around people and putting up a facade just as long as you can tolerate the situations that you're in because you need to be focused on your external rewards. Yeah, I don't think it's a deep spiritual respect for a person's identity or character or integrity. I think we most often um, are influenced by what the media or a workplace defines as respect. And I think that's where we see the lack of truth telling. And I think that's where we see the spiritual division of individuals. And it's kind of hard to bring an authentic self to an environment that isn't cultivating or creating that space for you to show up. And I think that is the challenging piece. And I think that's what makes these initiatives and reform for social justice very challenging. And it's like the school system where we have so many different definitions of respect that we aren't moving in alignment. And respect is about spiritual alignment to your purpose. Why are you here? Why are you here? One of the examples I use all the time about respect is about sports. And I think you see respect for the game and how it's being played from a team perspective. Most often the GM, the owners, the players, the coaches, the trainers, the medical staff, the fans, they're all in alignment to win. And they respect the game enough. You have to be honest about it. You have to be a truth teller to say that this person isn't getting the job. This person can get the job. This person actually has the ability, skills, talents, and the capacity to get the job. And we're going to feature this person because this puts us in the best position to win. Why we don't do that? Why don't we do that? Why do we sit in the room, disrespect ourselves while someone else that we know isn't ordained to have the divine calling of the spiritual vocation to do the work, and we sit in silence? Don't y'all think that's disrespectful? You see it. You see it crashing, and you sit and you wait until it burns out of fear, right? Out of losing, because it was connected, the goal was connected to an external reward. And I think that is the problematic issue when it comes to a lot of the reforms and initiatives around justice. Most of us have attached respect to being liked, to being accepted, to be able to assimilate. And I think, we hear this imposter syndrome all the time. I think that's exactly what's tearing up your spirit. And to me, it's a level of disrespect. And in this space, it's definitely disrespectful to the vocation of justice work. What are we afraid of? What are you really afraid of? I believe I've shared the question I posed to K through 12 teachers about doing what's right. And they would all look at me and say, well, I need to keep my job. And I was like, just imagine if you did your job by only doing what's right. How many more people would gain another level of respect for the work that's needed? Secondly, respect and appreciation for the opportunity to lead, right? So if you go through all this, you get in a position of leadership, and you know what needs to get done, could that be seen as an opportunity to show your respect for the purpose of the work? And when you don't, could that be seen and viewed as disrespect for the work and what it takes? I don't know. I just know here at the Courageous Hearts Collective, we see respect as in standing in your truth and standing up for those that aren't in the room to amplify your voice as truth, to advocate for them. But the self-justice piece is just as important. That's why I don't simply define justice from a courtroom, from a policy, from legislation, because that justice work needs to get done in the self first. You owe you that in every family, in every relationship, in every community, way before you get to your job. Or are we disrespecting ourselves by not being truth tellers? By not connecting to our culture and owning it, by seeing diversity as a demographic stat that you can check on a box. That's a whole lot of disrespect to having a spiritual connection to the human from where I'm sitting. We want to move in a different way because we think on our Venn diagram that if you do the first three pillars with intention, if you do healing first, justice always, then the respect for it will be reforming it forever. You will always want to get stronger in your purpose and in your calling. And then that becomes the vicious cycle of generational repair, of community repair, of dismantling structural inequality, of attacking the systemic lie, attacking the family lie. Standing on business is what they say, right? 10 toes down. Self-respect, respect for the permit, respect for the purpose, respect for the divine calling, respect for the vocation that's needed to walk in the light, to serve others. How many of us understand that the awareness of this is where we all must be? How many of us understand how important it is to make sure that internally self-respect comes first before we can go across the street and respect others? Just so we can put some labels on this, I want to make sure that I'm clear about where I'm going with the respect variable here. We're going to call it conditional respect. We're going to use that workplace example that I just gave so we can understand clearly that conditional respect is tolerance, right? I'm engaging with you because your office door is next door to mine. We having this conversation because we're actually working on a project together. Oh, we're going to go to lunch because that's the climate of being in this corporation and they say we should go to lunch with each other. And that's why it fades. We learned last week when it's attached to external rewards or it's about laws or rules or have-tos, it will fade if the regime fades, right? If the regime changes, then so will the rules and the laws, and you're going to be a pendulum switching based off that. All external, but nothing internal. Here at the Courageous Hearts Collective, where healing first, justice always, and reform forever is our covenant, it is about, again, the uncancellable respect, meaning that I can't listen to a word that someone says and hand that power over to them by getting myself out of character and acting up, bringing violence to that person over words because they hurt my feelings. True telling, authentic self, the divine calling of the type of respect that you can't take away from me because I have done the healing. I have touched the pain points. I have overcome the internal barriers that made me think my self-respect was embodied in violence, in yelling. We're talking about being in contact with that holy anger. We know about the emotions. We talked about them. All of us have them. Nothing wrong with that. But we're talking about that self-respect connected to the purpose of the holy anger because the injustice is what is really upsetting you. And we have so many opportunities right now to apply respect to the holy anger in this socio-political climate. How many of y'all mad about how we living right now? How many of you waking up every day looking at the news or social media and see all the levels of disrespect that are happening? Now you tell me if that's not external. You tell me you don't see people with unhealed trauma looking for external validation when they acting up and showing out? Where you see a biblical vocation in any of it? Unhealed. We're not handing our respect over here. It's internal. It's deeply ingrained to our purpose. We locked and loaded. We staying focused. You cannot cancel our healing work for respect. Not handing it over to you. We're here to advocate for those that can't be in the room. So as long as we clear, we're talking about the difference between self-respect, conditional respect, and uncancellable respect. Start first with self. I don't want to listen to the media, no workplace, even some HR spaces, that we don't want that truthful respect that I'm just here not to get fired, you know? We want that thing deeply ingrained where you can't cancel it and I'm in control of it and I'm not going to hand it over to someone that doesn't appreciate the value of what it looks like. So we clear, right? You cannot cancel the respect of a messenger. Healing first, justice always, reform forever. How do we utilize the messenger method to address the respect pillar? To go from fear to confident when it comes to respect. Self-reflection. What is the compromise? What did you exchange? What did you exchange for being silent? Think about that last meeting that you were in, the last conference, the last conversation with a loved one. What reward did you exchange for your silence? Now, was it worth it? What is the compromise? How does it feel to sit in the room with the oppressor and not stand up for justice? Y'all think y'all got time, don't you? Y'all think that this going to pass and the opportunity is going to come up again. It's going to keep coming up and you're going to keep being in the room and this ain't going to have no impact on your spiritual being, your health, your wellness, no psyche. You just think this just is, we just passing time, right? Because you're going to get there. What you waiting on? The divine calling? You had your op just now. You in the room. You heard it. The buzzer went off. When you going to answer it? Stop compromising. Self-awareness. It's okay to have the fear. Got to show up anyway, right? Label it. How many of you have the courage and the awareness and the accountability to label it? Give it a color. Give it a name. Give it what gives you a bad taste in your mouth. And every time you do it, put that label on it. Because once you can get that awareness, then comes the accountability. And then you got to hold others to the same messenger method that you held yourself. Self-justice to working towards the uncancellable justice. Self-respect to uncancellable respect. Lastly, consciousness. The self-consciousness, the empowerment phase. How often are you in the room and you are speaking truth to power because it's the right thing to do, it's the vocational, biblical thing to do, and not concerned with the consequences because your faith tells you that you're doing your part? How often? How often do you speak freely in the workplace environment, in home, in relationships, parent, child, friend to friend? How often? How often does your consciousness show up to speak truth to power, to know that it is going to help the relationship, help the person, help the group, help the organization, help the people that you are advocating for? How often do you do it? Start making a list. Let's get rid of the compromise. Let's increase our awareness and label it. Hold others accountable as well. And now let's get to empowerment piece and start putting it in action. These are the steps of the messenger method that we believe in at the Courageous Hearts Collective that are necessary for transformation. We need you. We need healed people in healthcare. We need healed people in criminal justice, education, politics, housing, government assistance programs. We need healed messengers with uncancellable respect. If any of you are ready and would love my help, that's what I'm here for. If you're thinking about some ways that I could help or not sure, I want you to do me a solid. I want you to have a conversation with someone that you trust. I want you to share this episode. Say, hey, I think Dr. Starr's got something that you need to hear as well. And I want you to go to the website and book a free consultation. Yeah, for the free. For the free. Have a conversation with the boy and see what he got. Let's get rid of some of those cobwebs and let's replace some of that fear with courage and send you back into that space healed so you can amplify your voice to advocate for those not in the room. We need you. We need you. Give me a chance to help. Let my calling and my purpose be fruitful in a way for holistic people. Let me help. Okay. We're coming to the end. And of course, you know, I do have a challenge. I have a CTA. If you would be so willing as messengers to accept this challenge, I've already shared with you one that I want you to share with someone this episode that may need to hear it. Dr. Starr's got something to say. In addition, I want you to name that compromise. I do. I think it's important. That one is huge. I want you to reflect on being in a space where you compromise for an external reward. And I want you to write it down. I can see you shaking your heads because some of them are coming to light as I'm speaking, right? And then once you write it down, I want you to forgive yourself. I want you to say it out loud. I forgive you, Brian Chad. I forgive you. And then I want you to write a new commitment for the space that you were in when you compromise. And I want you to write it elementary style. I want you to write that new commitment 5 times. And I want you to start saying it to yourself before you go to bed, when you get up in the morning, so it becomes organic in your spirit. Because when the next time that opportunity comes, it should be a trigger to repeat that new commitment to the principal action for respect. Stand up. And the last one, in a board meeting, job this week, faculty meeting, wherever you are, just choose one small space. Don't want anybody fired if you're not ready to move in with courage. But just take one small principal action step this week with your uncancellable respect. Instead of being silent, have an informed opinion this time. Just a small step. And please share with us. When this one hits, I would love to hear the comments of the challenge that you have accepted and what you did about it. Make sure you drop some comments on how you are taking action with the last pillar of respect. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, I'm greatly appreciative. We got one more mini-sode before we end the first Becoming a Messenger series of the Be the Messenger framework. Be courageous, be authentic, be love, be the messenger.